Most people spend the greatest part of their lifetime working in order to survive. And if they have any little freedom left, they get frightened of it and seek out any and every means to get rid of it. Johann Goethe, The Sorrows of Jan Werther. Power available per worker and industrial efficiency have grown by an order of magnitude over the last 1.5 centuries of human history, whereas the population of the Earth has grown by 7 times only. Such significant changes in the area of engineering and technology are caused both by transition from the use of mainly muscle power of humans and animals to the use of technogenic energy, and by extremely rapid scientific and technological process. Then why does not the great increase in production efficiency reduce the working hours, and people still have to work more and more to make both ends meet and to save their consumer status? To provide a substantive answer to the question, one should understand what challenges the humanity is faced with. Fundamentally, there are 2 such challenges only. The first challenge is to provide conditions for survival and evolution of the biological species, which means to provide an acceptable standard of living. The second challenge is to realize and accomplish the purposes for which humanity is placed in the biosphere. For each person, it means that cooperating in joint activities, he provides his family and himself with sufficient amount of food, clothing, shelter, and other necessities of life. When these basic needs are satisfied, a person should have enough time and facilities to educate children, to be self-developing, and improve the society. Based on life experience, the most efficient duration of the working day should not exceed 4 hours. If a person is occupied for 12 to 15 hours a day in industrial sector, like in China at present, such pace of life can be withstood only by young people, and for no longer than 2 years. According to scientists, the level of technological development achieved by the 1960s allows people to work just 1 hour a day in order to produce essentials required for one individual. Obviously, Mikhail Prokhorov, a Russian oligarch who proposed to increase the working week duration up to 60 hours back in 2011, was just pretending to show that he pursued goals of higher production. In fact, these are the goals of his masters, and such goals go far beyond economics. These masters are the managers of the global level, who pursue a different purpose. That is to preserve a monopoly in managing social issues of high public significance. To eliminate competition in the sphere of management, a common well-intentioned person should not have time for self-education and upbringing of the younger generation, which leads to a hidden slavery that can be felt but not always realized. Therefore, in the present economic system, the labor majority is working to meet the needs of the parasitic minority, the so-called elite. From slave owners' point of view, in order to keep a person being occupied by survival, rather than by achievement of the objectives for which he or she was born, it is necessary, firstly, not to reduce the duration of the working day, secondly, to prevent the growth of purchase power of the monetary unit, thirdly, to support reproduction of the degradation and parasitic needs of the society in order to utilize the released time and creative capacity of people. Fourthly, to get rid of unusable and undesirable elements of the society on a timely basis. Point 1. Not to reduce the duration of the working day. At the beginning of its development, humanity should reach the level of production allowing to meet the vital needs of most people uninterruptedly. When the vital needs of the majority are satisfied, the collective and individual labor becomes the means to maintain this living standard, and the time and resources released therefore should be aimed at the achievement of the objectives for which the mankind actually came to life on planet Earth. The reality is that the organizers of the current world order are managing by tracking the trends which take place in society. They do not have an army of their own and a well-developed administrative apparatus, but due to the possession of cognition techniques and methods, They are able to get into any sphere of human activities. They support those human activities that fit into their concept of management and try to suppress those that do not. With this, they are similar to a gardener who waters, trims and grafts a fruit tree. Let's see how the activity of the gardener, whose task is to perpetuate a full occupation of a man and therefore to prevent humans from fulfilling their purpose on earth, has been manifested in the global historical process. Currently, some scientists have identified 3 main stages of technological development of society. If you look at them through the prism of a full-time occupation, one will be able to see the stages of a latent slavery system, rather than the stages of the society development. In agrarian society, most people were employed in the agricultural sector, with the domination of muscular power of a man and an animal. Implementation of the full-time occupation became possible through the introduction of, firstly, inefficient farming with the use of a moldboard plough, which resulted in crop yield reduction, whereas the growth in technical equipment was designated for the extension of the cultivated areas only, in order to feed the growing population. Secondly, the cattle breeding on a commercial scale and in a private farmstead, which guarantees clock-round and year-round employment, as an average production cycle here equals to 60 to 12 months, and management of personal household requires daily employment, without the possibility to leave the farm to anyone. Even if meat is one of the food types for humans, this type of food is not optimal in terms of resource intensity and time consumption. But the science and technology have evolved, which leads to increasing production. Society started to move from natural economy and barter to commodity production and trade. By the 19th century, population growth rates were much higher than the rates of growth of agricultural lands and livestock. So people had to move to a new way of life, which was called the industrialization. In the industrial society, the globalizer gardener has decided to support the tendency to create an artificial environment, the technosphere, where the development of technology and population should be manageable. To control the spread of techniques and technologies, the historically formed academies of sciences and the law of copyright were invented, allowing for an exclusive access to knowledge. To control the population, most of its part must be concentrated on limited areas, where it is easy to take advantage of people and coin the money during the natural degeneration caused by the living in artificial environment. The problem to ensure a full-time occupation has been solved by directing the potential of society that gets disengaged in agriculture to the support of vital activity of the technosphere that is constantly getting more and more complex. When the production level became higher than the level of potential consumption due to the technological development, then came the need to invent artificial human needs and reduce the service life and technical characteristics of the output products, implementing the system of intentional obsolescence. Then the society was transferred to the next stage of the so-called development, post-industrial society. Now, when in a certain industrialized part of the world there are plenty of stable functioning networks such as communication, transportation, electrical networks and others, as well as entities that provide services, the problem of employment of local citizens is solved by the need of keeping them in good working condition. The project of globalization can move forward. The bulk of industry moves to another part of the planet where the society is at the agrarian stage of development. That happened to Japan, for example. When Japan had developed a total infrastructure required to ensure a full-time occupation for the local population, it was given the status of post-industrial country, and industrialization was exported to other countries in Asia. We can see that no matter how the mankind would improve their technosphere, with no release of time for personal development, a man is doomed to survive without realization of his mission on the earth. Realizing this, Joseph Stalin, when answering a question related to the conditions of cultural advance of society, wrote the following in his book titled Economic Problems of Socialism in the USSR. It would be wrong to think that such a substantial advance in the cultural standard of the members of society can be brought about without substantial changes in the present status of labor. For this, it is necessary, first of all, to shorten the working day at least to 6 and subsequently to 5 hours. This is needed in order that the members of society might have the necessary free time to receive an all-round education. But in the West, which was deep in the mire of latent slavery, there existed different approaches. From shooting the demonstration of American workers in May 1886 for their claim of an 8-hour workday, to John Maynard Keynes, who blurted out the ideas about the free time for the elite. Being a wealthy man, he, Gazelle, could devote the last decades of his life to the two most delightful occupations available to those who do not have to earn a living. Those are book writing and experiments in agriculture. Point 2. To prevent the growth of purchase power of the monetary unit. Cash purchasing power is the ability of a currency unit to be exchanged for a certain amount of goods. Accordingly, the purchasing power of salaries, pensions or aids is the amount of goods that a person can buy for his income. To keep a person in status of struggle for survival, not allowing him to achieve the goals for which he lives on the earth, there are two basic types of tools in all types of societies. The first tool, central bank. Central banks are closed corporations of bankers and moneylenders and serve as instruments of supranatural governance. They are not controlled by the governments of the countries where they locate, and the main means to achieve their goals is crediting and interest. In 1906, a general of Tsarist security services, Alexander Nechvolodov, wrote in his book entitled From Ruin to Prosperity about the sociological doctrine made out for the bankers by their masters. These people remember sacredly the covenant of Moses given by him to the people in the desert. And you will lend to many nations, but will borrow from none. You will rule over many nations, but none will rule over you. At the beginning of the 21st century, every single country in the world became a debtor of transnational clans of the bankers and moneylenders. After withdrawal of money from people, this corporation gives back in circulation exactly as much money as it thinks necessary, not taking into account the needs of a real production sector. When these algorithms come to food and shelter, the society is subjected to financial and economic genocide. But history knows examples of other views on usury. For more than 1,300 years, usury has been explicitly denied in the Quran. Those who consume usury shall not rise up from their tomb, except as he who rises in madness that Satan has touched. That is because they say, selling is like usury. Allah has permitted trading and forbidden usury. To whomsoever an exhortation comes from his Lord, then he desists. He shall have his past gains, and his matter is with Allah. But whoever reverts shall be among the people of the fire, and shall remain in it forever. Stalin also understood the nature of usury. Having realized that the dollar was the tool for enslaving the world by the transnational clans of bankers and moneylenders, in 1950 he ceased to secure the ruble by the dollar and bound it to the gold, thus creating an alternative global credit and financial system. The second tool, the media and the existing culture, impose its own level of consumption upon every stratum of society. The modern production and consumption system is primarily set up to meet the needs of the elite, and the needs of the rest of the population are met based on the leftover principle, just don't die out. But both the elite and the populace, despite the difference in consumption, are the prisoners of the system of slavery, because there's no ideological difference between them. To prevent mixing of the social strata, every social status is supposed to meet a certain level of consumption. Thus, the entire society has found itself to be head over ears in debt, and the salary of the poor and the middle class suffices for approximately a month or two of consumption, which corresponds to the status. Point 3. To support reproduction of the degradation and parasitic needs in the society. If a person was able to earn money for an acceptable standard of living and free up some time, then in accordance with the notions of the slave owners, he has to devote all the free time to his own degradation. The reality is that all human needs can be divided into two classes. The demographic needs, if they are not satisfied, it won't be able to provide a comfortable life and upbringing of younger generations. Such needs are water, food, clothing, shelter, transportation, communication, education. The degradation and parasitic needs are the harmful factors such as depravity, alcohol, tobacco, other drugs and poisons, and other things that destroy the human psyche and genetics. It should be noted that during a thoughtless consumption race, some harmless products and services may also pose threat to health. To suppress the creativity in people, take their time and break the link with what is happening in the real world, making people pay for this the money earned by themselves. Current culture maintains traditions to consume various poisons such as alcohol, tobacco, and other intoxicants. And recently, there have appeared the technologies of virtual reality. Computer games, some types of music, films, TV shows and books can kill free time, stuffing one's head with useless and often harmful information. Today it is materialized in various gadgets, sufficiently compact and portable like cigarettes or a bottle of beer, that allows to keep an individual under the influence. Thus the slave owners get an opportunity to upload the information they need directly into the human unconscious mental levels, and gradually a man can lose the ability to distinguish between his own thoughts and those imposed on him from outside. Being deprived of creativity, a person begins to lose the meaning of life and happiness. He begins to run away from reality and to find the ways how to kill free time. At the same time, people who are free from the previously mentioned addictions often do not have enough time to evolve and educate their children. Point 4. To get rid of unusable and undesirable elements of the society on a timely basis. As for those people who were able to get away from the above-mentioned influence, they undergo physical liquidation. For example, uncontrolled or no longer needed leaders and politicians, undesirable writers and poets, unwanted public figures and scientists are neutralized by a wide range of activities, from outright terror and assassinations to duels and fights that are traditional for this or that culture. On the other hand, from time to time, the potential of the whole society is wasted in military conflicts, which kill the best representatives of society. Thus, two types of conflicts can be defined. Conflicts within a concept of control, when there is no disagreements between the control centers about the conception of life organization. Conflicts between concepts of control, when each control center has its own vision of the future, and it is not willing to accept someone else's conception of life organization. The difference between them can be easily demonstrated by illustrative historical examples. For instance, many of the wars in Europe are called civil discord. In reality, it was just a slaughter of the undesirables. The strongest men were selected, being carriers of the best genetics. They have been trained and then led into battles. Maneuvering fights were considered to be a sign of weakness and cowardice, so it was preferable to fight head-on. Thus the potential of society was disposed, as the rear area did not always preserve the best representatives of the human race, both in their spiritual and physical characteristics. As a result, the potential of people gets shaven off, and at a historical moment, when the opportunity to accomplish another concept of life organization is open, there is no such people who are capable of doing it. Consequently, the process of latent slavery in society continues to flow in the same direction. Another matter is, when the war between the concepts of management is on, it is a life and death fight, because the goal is to eliminate the carriers of another concept of life organization. European generals were very surprised and unhappy about Russian Marshal Alexander Suvorov's maneuverable battles, but Suvorov could not behave otherwise, because he followed a different concept. Let us summarize what was said earlier. The realization of the above-mentioned algorithm of a full-time occupation in the system of latent slavery allows to get out of its influence, and now there appear some objective prerequisites for it, namely, effect of the law of time, which excludes monopoly on knowledge, and all the secrets are supposed to go public, including the goals of the global managers. Consequently, the organizers of globalization, on the basis of biblical project of enslaving the humanity, lost their control over many processes in society, in which an alternatively encompassing concept of management came to life. However, we are not calling anyone for lounging, which also leads to degradation, but we claim that the production and distribution of products in the society should be focused on meeting the demographically required needs of the majority of people, but not the selfish desires of small clans of the elite. In our century, we have a unique opportunity to understand what is happening in the life of earthly civilization and start to master the potential of its development. The mankind can give up on psychology of survival and choose the way of achievement of goals set on us from on high. If people ignore this opportunity, the humanity potential can be utilized again either as a result of biospheric catastrophe or in a global military conflict, the ground for which is diligently prepared by the rulers of the biblical West. Reconsideration of his life goals and arranging them in the order of priority will help each man to control the organization of his life, and will let people know which way the humanity will go in general. Either the way of survival in fight with the biosphere of the earth, or the way to provide demographically required needs to everyone, followed by the development of the capacity to achieve the objectives for which the humanity exists on the earth. Humans running through their lives, sparing no feet, home and work, work and home, making their ends meet, taking days off for more breathing, holidays for run, aging, pensions, breathless living, is it where you run? Were you born for these intentions? Did you live for this? Waited hopefully for blessing, studied, dreamed, believed? If you did not, then slow down. Take time as you can, and start over being righteous as a brand new man.